Republic of the Philippines is a nation of contrast when compared with other countries in Southeast Asia. Nearly 90% of population is Christian, compared to Buddhism in most other countries. The country was colonized 3 separate times, first by the Spanish, then the Americans, followed by the Japanese. The country has a prevalence of Spanish names and surnames instead of more traditional ethnic names. The country has a population of slightly more than 100 million people, with an estimated additional 12 million citizens living in foreign countries, making it one of the world's largest diasporas. This group of people is also responsible for nearly 10% of the country's GDP through financial remittances from abroad to family in the Philippines. Like Indonesia, although less in number, the Philippines consists of thousands of islands and counts at least 180 different languages still in use within the country. The country's geographical location on the Pacific Ring of Fire means that it still has several active volcanoes and experiences frequent earthquakes. Due to the volcanic nature of many of the areas of the country, it means that the Philippines is rich in many different minerals, and it is estimated that it has the second largest gold deposit in the world after South Africa. The influences of colonization can still be seen throughout Philippines, not only in the names but also in different and distinct architectural styles of the different areas, the food culture, which boasts many fast food chains, and the large number of people who speak English in addition to nation's language Filipino. The Philippines was one of founding members of ASEAN. Kamusta? Welcome to Philippines. Jose Rizal is considered one of the greatest national heroes of the Philippines. He was a poet, novelist, journalist, and eye doctor. He graduated from the University St. Thomas before continuing his studies in Europe. He was a polyglot, able to converse in at least 22 languages. When he returned to the Philippines in 1892, he formed a movement that promotes moderate social reforms through legal means, but the group was banned. At this time, he was already considered an enemy of the state by the Spanish for having published a novel and promoting equal rights and freedom of speech for the people of the Philippines. Although not involved in the rebellion that broke out in 1896, Rizal was captured on his way to Cuba and sent back to the Philippines to face a trial. As he was imprisoned, he wrote a manifesto that opposed the rebellion, and in which he noted that education of people and achieving the nation's identity would be required before freedom could be attained. Convicted of rebellion, he was executed on December 30, 1896. While in the Philippines, we had an opportunity to speak with a well-known historian about the history of the Philippines and the effects of colonization on the country, as well as some of the challenges facing the Philippines and the region as we enter the age of AEC.
Why is it important for young people to learn about history?
Yeah. Simple. Historical education to help us develop critical thinking in a democracy. Thousands of years, there were already human settlements in the Philippine archipelago. And these human settlements evolved into a network of bands, tribes, villages, which we call barangays, sultanates, kingdoms, and city-states. So we had our own civilization for thousands of years. And then the Spaniards arrived in 1521. It's called the Magellan Expedition. They slowly imposed Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines. which lasted for 300 years. There was a revolution, the Philippine Revolution in 1896, which climaxed in independence and a republic in 1899. Unfortunately, there was a Philippine-American War in 1899, and the war continued all the way to World War I. The Americans only left because of World War II. And then it was the turn of the Japanese to invade the Philippines for 3.5 years. So you can say that the Philippines had 3 colonial periods, mainly the Spanish occupation, the American occupation, and the Japanese occupation in the Philippines. When we won World War II, the Philippines became a republic again. There are some Sanskrit words in Philippine languages. But you see, the Philippines is located in both Southeast Asia, facing Thailand, and the other half faces the Pacific. So Philippine civilization is at the same time Asian, and the Pacific side is called Austronesian. We have our own indigenous languages, and it is basically Malay, which is similar to the languages used in Indonesia. Well, in the thousands of years before the arrival of the Spaniards, the Chinese kingdoms traded with our ancestors. There's a long list of Philippine products that they liked, that they wanted. So, before the arrival of the Spaniards, the Chinese were trading partners of the ancient Filipinos. Like Thailand and the rest of ASEAN, the biggest challenges facing the Philippines are catastrophic climate change. As you know, we are visited on the average by 20 typhoons, and the typhoons are getting stronger. And then number 2, the aggressive expansion of China into the West Philippine Sea. And number 3, domestic challenges in the Philippines relating to corruption. Well, the Philippines, along with Thailand, is one of the founding members of ASEAN. Since 1967, we have been looking forward to building a strong and friendly region composed of Southeast Asians. What we need to do right now is for the Philippines and Thailand and the rest of ASEAN to sit down and start writing history books that will enhance the treatment of each country, each ASEAN country, in our own national histories. So we should expand the number of pages devoted to Philippine relations with Thailand in the ancient period, as well as in the modern period, and the rest of ASEAN as well. There are quite a few. Spain introduced Roman Catholic Christianity to the Philippines, whereas the Americans introduced evangelical Christianity to the Philippines. Spain introduced the Spanish language, and the Americans introduced English. Spain introduced their cuisine, and the Americans also introduced American food. Spain introduced the European style of government, and the Americans introduced the American presidential system of government. And there are many other differences. But basically, Spain and America belong to the Western civilization.
Established as the Church of Manila in 1571, the present minor basilica became a cathedral in 1579. The original building, made of wood and bamboo, was destroyed by a fire in 1583, which also destroyed much of Manila. Subsequent reconstructions of the cathedral with stone were earlier severely damaged or destroyed by earthquake. The years 1600, 1645, 1863, and 1880s. The reconstructed cathedral of the late 1880s were destroyed by bombing near the close of Second World War. The present cathedral was built between 1954 to 1958. A total of 7 Corellian bells weighing nearly 17 tons are the largest bells actively used in the Philippines. The cathedral is dedicated to Mary, the Mother of Jesus, and the cathedral housed a bronze life-size statue of the Immaculate Conception by Italian Enzo Ascenza. The stained glass windows were designed and created by another master Philippine artist, Carlo Ocampo. While at the Ayala Museum, we also interviewed the museum's senior curator, Mr. Kenneth S. Guerra, about several different areas of Philippines arts and culture and how they evolved and were influenced by the various colonizers.
I'm Kenneth Guerra. I'm the senior curator and head of conservation of Ayala Museum.
What is the traditional music of Philippines? Can you tell us more about the influence Spanish and American colonization had on its development?
Well, the original Filipino music actually started from way back. Even before the Spaniards colonized the Philippines, we already had our set of music. However, with the fusion of the Spaniards coming in and the Americans coming in, it was kinda adapted, and now we have what we call original Filipino music, which is in Filipino or it can be in English as well.
How many different regional languages are spoken in Philippines today?
There are over 100 languages spoken in the Philippines. Inasmuch as the Philippines is actually an archipelago, it is composed of 7,107 islands, and because of these geographical borders of islands, apparently Filipinos were able to develop several languages individual from each other.
How does society feel about their colonial past? Are there elements that they are especially proud of or uncomfortable with?
We've had a long colonial past under the Spaniards, close to 400 years, and another almost 100 years under the Americans. And as you can see, our past is what we are right now. So the Philippines is really quite unique from the rest of the Southeast Asian brothers of us like Thais, Indonesians, Malaysians, Singaporeans, because we have a very colorful past. We were colonized and we were under the rule of foreigners who were here at one time, and that is what makes us unique, and that is the flavor that we have right now.
Before the Spanish colonization, what was the main religion people practiced?
Filipinos then were supposed to be animists. They respected nature, the things around them. So in the tour you had of the pre-colonial gold, you can see that the inspiration from the objects that the Filipinos did were actually that of nature. So you can see patterns from plants, patterns from animals, patterns from creatures of the sea, and from clouds, from the mountains, from the rivers, because that was actually some sort of the respect we offered nature.
Why is it important for young people to learn about art and culture.
People should know about their arts and culture because actually this is the soul of the people. It is what gets you forward. It is what makes your day. Art helps understand life, and it's culture that binds you together as a people, as a nation, and it keeps you forward. It's Philippine culture that gives the smile in our faces.
With more than 10% of the population working and residing abroad, has migration helped broaden and strengthen the appeal of Filipino culture internationally.
Actually, you're right. A lot of Filipinos are already working abroad, and somehow, by working abroad, they get to expand their point of views, they expand their horizon, and they learn from other cultures as well. So I see this as something positive as far as the individual worker, the family that directly gets affected, and so in the nation as well. Because of course, when they work abroad, they bring in additional income for the Philippines. Arts and culture are essential in everyday life because it is what teaches you how to look at things, how to appreciate things, and they're kind of very positive as far as life is concerned. When you look at an artwork, you tend to internalize and you tend to communicate with that particular work of art. And once you do so, you exercise your mind. You try to look at things of value, things positive. And from there, you can grow. It improves your communication skills, your interpersonal skills, and especially when you visit museums, you get entertained and you learn as well from the experience. And once you leave the museum, it makes you feel good.
Kamusta? Welcome to Philippines. So today here we are in the Santo Tomas University. It is the oldest university in Asia, and it was founded on 28th of April 1611 by the Archbishop of Manila. It was built in the memory of the Dominican theologian Saint Thomas Aquinas. Now, since its establishment, it was interrupted only twice in 1898 to 1899 during the revolution against the Spanish, and again in 1942 to 1945 during the Japanese occupation. Nowadays, the university has 45,000 students and 8,500 of new students from 50,000 applications. Besides interviewing Mr. Kenneth Escura, we also received a tour of Ayala Museum and an explanation about some of the artifacts at the museum, as well as a brief history of the Spanish in the Philippines, which start with Ferdinand Magellan.
He went out to the Far East in search of the Spice Islands, Malaccas. However, he got lost. He was further blown up by the wind. He reached Middle Philippines, which is actually Cebu City. And that happened on March 15, 1621. So his landing in the Philippines was really accidental. And because they noticed there's plenty of gold in the Philippines, like what you saw on the 4th floor, they decided to conquer the Philippines, and they called it Filipinas from the word Philip, as the King Philip of Spain. That was how they got here. And actually, what's different from us with the rest of our Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, we were colonized by the Spaniards. That's why we have Christianity. That's the main difference between Philippines and the rest of our neighboring countries. Most of you are Buddhists, right? Okay. Most of us are Christians. 80%. Okay. 80% of us are Christians because of being colonized by Spain. We have a very unique exhibition of dioramas that feature Philippine history.
The Ayala has many different exhibitions, and we visit the second floor where the history of Philippines is told through dioramas. The dioramas reflect everyday scenes of household activities, manufacturing of goods such as pottery making, the traditional method of creation of terrains for rice cultivation, the first mass said by a priest in the new country, and military battles between locals and colonizers.
The favorite is rather Rizal Park. Rizal Park because the Rizal Park has a lot of history.
For Rizal, he tried to help the country. Like he doing like same as Aung San Suu Kyi, and then he being executed by Spanish soldiers.
The old city that from the Rizal family museum is like yesterday. So because it have many like old ancient Spanish architecture and American cultural.
My favorite thing from this week is when we visit the San Augustine Museum, because in the museum it shows me about the Catholicism, which is similar to my religion, and from that I can see the difference between two of them.